My name is Rafael, you're watching Rock and Roll Garage, and today I'm gonna show you who are the 20 best singers of all time according to Ozzy Osbourne. But first, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave your comment. Tell me if you agree with him or not. Well, back in 2008, Rolling Stone magazine released a list of the best singers of all time. But to come up with that list, many people voted. And they invited even famous vocalists as just like Ozzy Osbourne. And sometime later they released these lists. And today I'm gonna show you Ozzy Osbourne's list, okay? So in position number 20, Ozzy voted for Steve Miller, the leader of the Steve Miller Band, the American group, and I really agree with him. Steve Miller is fantastic. I really like him as well. Position number 19, Mr. Neil Young, the Canadian legend dairy artist who was was part of Buffalo Springfield, part of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and obviously had a very successful solo career. Position number 18, the King, Mr. Elvis Presley, probably one of the artists who really influenced that whole generation, especially that Ozzy was part of, that generation that was growing up in the 50s and then would form their own bands in the 60s. So Elvis was extremely important, just like other names like Chuck Berry and Little Richard. So he voted for Elvis. Position number 17, and this one's quite interesting, Mr. Peter Gabriel, who first achieved fame as the vocalist of Genesis and was really a fundamental part of that era of Genesis as mainly a progressive rock band, a pure progressive rock band, and everything changed after Peter left and Phil Collins occupied the vocals. The band became more commercial and etc. And he had also a very successful solo career later on, especially in the 80s with his most famous album, Soul, released in 1986. So this is Ozzy's pick for the position number 17. Position number 16, Ray Charles. Obviously one of the greatest artists of all time for sure. A fundamental part of the history, not only of the American music, but for music in general. He influenced countless artists worldwide over the decades. He's certainly one of the greatest of all time. Number 15, Mr. Ray Davies, and I really agree with Ozzy on this one because I think Ray Davies is the vocalist, guitarist, and main songwriter of the Kinks, which I think is such an underrated band. I mean, we talk about the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Who, and other bands that first appeared there in the 60s and achieved fame still in the 60s. And I think the Kinks is quite underrated. They had such an incredible discography. The lyrics are so incredible, and they talked about so many things. They really are an incredible band and deserved to be more on the spotlight. Number 14, Aretha Franklin, and she is certainly one of the most important American singers of all time. She is really had an incredible voice, and her discography is just beautiful. She recorded about everything. She recorded full soul, a little bit of funk, and even a little bit of rock and roll. The body of work that she did is just incredible. Her career was incredible, and the list that Keith Richards made to Rolling Stone magazine, he placed Aretha on the first position. He thinks she's the best singer of all time. If you want to see Keith's list, you can take a look below the video or right here, and you're gonna see Keith's list. And let's continue. Position number 13, another incredible female vocalist, Tina Turner, who sadly left us in 2023, if I'm not mistaken, right? You know, what a wonderful career she had, first with her ex-husband Ike, and she first achieved fame with that duo, Ike and Tina and Turner. You know, just an incredible. She released with him many incredible records, and then she became this huge pop star on her own, especially in the 80s. You know how many hits, how many incredible songs she released, and she still is certainly one of the greatest singers of all time. Position number 12, Mr. Steve Winwood, and I really agree with Ozzy on this one, especially as a songwriter, if you're gonna see Steve as a songwriter. But you know, to imagine the career he had. You know, he first joined the Spencer Davis group when he was still a teenager, and you know, so many hits the band had when Steve was still a teenager, playing the organ, the keyboards, and singing. You know, what a wonderful voice he has. And I mean, he managed to be part of many eras of music, and you know how he was able to reinvent himself. You know, he was part of the Spencer Davis group. Then he was part of Blind Faith, the super group with Eric Clapton and Ginger Baker. And then obviously he achieved fame. He was also part of Traffic, another incredible band. And after on, especially in the late 70s and the 80s, his solo career had, you know, a lot of pop hits like Valerie, Back on the High Life Again, and Higher Love. You know, those were smash hits, especially in the 80s. So I agree with Ozzy on this one, and I also agree with Ozzy on the position number 11, with Mr. Stevie Wonder. You know, just like Stevie Winwood, you know, what a long career Stevie has. You know, he started as a kid, and he already had hits as a kid, and he grew up in music. You know, he'd been in the music business almost since birth. You know, he was just a kid when he started to record and sing and write songs. You know, he's such a fundamental part of the history of music, such an incredible artist. And position, we reached the top 10, position number 10, Bob Marley. And I totally agree with Ozzy, because, you know, maybe if you're a heavy metal, hard rock fan, you might not be a huge fan of reggae music, but, you know, not only for the incredible compositions Bob Marley gave to the world, you know, his lyrics were so powerful, and it really meant a lot to not only Jamaica and many other countries. You know, his lyrics speak right with many people from many countries, and you know, he was such a meaningful and the impact, a meaningful artist, and the impact he has is tremendous. So I totally agree with Ozzy. And we reached position number 9, and it is a hard rock singer, Mr. Steven Tyler, the vocalist of Aerosmith, who sadly, due to a vocal injury, had to announce led to Aerosmith to announce their retirement from touring. And he certainly is one of the greatest voices in rock and roll, and an incredible songwriter as well. And I tend to think about him as the American version of Mick Jagger. You know, I really tend to see him that way. And you know, his nickname is the Demon of Screaming, and it's not a coincidence. You know, it's really true. What a wonderful voice he has. And talking about incredible hard rock singers, we reached the position number 8, the late legendary Bon Scott. You know, I don't think, although AC/DC was, you know, the core of the band is at the heart and soul of the band, were the brothers Malcolm and Angus Young. And they were able to show that with Brian Johnson later on, that they continue to achieve success and write incredible songs and albums. But, you know, I really think that, you know, Bon Scott was fundamental to AC/DC as well. I don't think AC/DC maybe wouldn't be the same without Bon. If they had another singer that was not good enough or wasn't a good songwriter like he was, I think he was really fundamental. So I totally agree with Ozzy on this one. And also on the position number 7, who is the late legendary as well, Mr. Roy Orbison. And I mean, Roy is a legendary artist who sadly left us too soon back in the late 80s. And I mean, he started his career, in those early days before the Beatles, and he even toured with the Beatles when the Beatles were just starting, then in England, and he reinvented himself during his career, and he even was part of the, from, in my opinion, the greatest supergroup of all time, which was the Traveling Wilburys with George Harrison, Jeff Lynne, Bob Dylan, and Tom Petty. So Robertson, another great pick. And the position number 6, Ozzy picked himself. Well, if you're voting for the greatest vocalists of all time and you're a vocalist, why not vote in you? And he placed him on the position number 6. And, although you might think, you may say, oh, Ozzy doesn't have one of the greatest voices of all time. Neither some people on this list. Obviously, it might be, you might think, well, we're talking about singers, not songwriters, and etc. But Ozzy really had I think, the perfect voice for that first era of Black Sabbath. I think it fitted quite well with the kind of music they were doing. So, for the importance he had for heavy metal music, for the birth of heavy metal music, I agree with him. I will list him at least on the most important singers of all time. And we reached the top 5, position number 5, Mr. Little Richard. And he's certainly, just like Elvis Presley, maybe, I think, more than Elvis Presley, obviously, because Little Richard, alongside with Chuck Berry and many others around that time, were really the godfathers of rock and roll music. I mean, Elvis really took what he learned with the blues artists and with people like Little Richard and Chuck Berry and transformed into something of his own. But, Little Richard, what an incredible songwriter, what an incredible singer, those falsettos and that incredible voice he had, those screams that Paul McCartney mimics until these days, and put some of that in some Beatles recordings. And I mean, rock and roll wouldn't have been the same without Little Richard. So I totally agree with Ozzy. And the position number 4, I totally agree with him too, because he chose Steve Marriott. I think he's certainly one of the most underrated singers and guitarists of all time. He tragically left us too soon in the early 90s. And I mean, the vocalist of the Small Faces, incredible band. And then he was part of Humble Pie with Peter Frampton. What an incredible band as well. And also his solo career, which is quite underrated. And I mean, what a voice he had, man. He was the perfect rock and roll singer, and he was an awesome guitarist as well. So he had the whole package. And we reached the top 3, position number 3, Mr. Elton John. And Ozzy loves Elton. They're good friends. And I totally agree with him. It's just incredible, the relationship between Elton and Bernie Taupin, because Bernie wrote most of the lyrics during Elton's career, and Elton took those lyrics and transformed into music. He came up with all these wonderful melodies, and what a wonderful career he has. He's certainly one of the greatest artists of all time. So I totally agree with Ozzy. Position number 2, Paul McCartney. Obviously one of the most important songwriters of all time, multi-instrumentalist, and a wonderful singer as well. All those incredible melodies he helped to come up with. It's just incredible. I think it's just fantastic and amazing choice Ozzy had. And the first position, another Beatle, John Lennon. And Ozzy is a huge Beatles fan. He used to fantasize when he was a kid that one of his sisters would marry Paul McCartney, for example, and he would have the chance to meet a Beatle. His room was packed with Beatles memorabilia, and he says that it was after hearing the Beatles for the first time that he decided he wanted to become a musician. That's what he wanted to do. So they were extremely important to him, and he covered many Beatles songs, especially on his 2005 covers album called Undercover. He covered one Beatles track and a couple of John Lennon solo career tracks as well. It's a cool album. If you haven't heard yet, you should check it out. And that's it. This is Ozzy's list. I hope you liked the video. If you want to read more, you can go to the description and visit the article we wrote about that. You can go to the list on Rolling Stone's website. And please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment, tell me what you think, if you agree with him or not. And thank you for watching. I see you later.